the Welsh Government's told us it's made more than £150 million of funding available to bus operators to help keep essential services on the road. Is the issue that some rural routes just don't have many passengers, maybe enough passengers? How busy are the buses that you're using?
Well, we have had incidents now where the bus is so full that the bus driver cannot allow any more people on. We have seen people left at the stop. We have actually been crammed in sometimes like cattle, simply because there are these 2-hourly gaps which run like a 4-hour slot on the outward journey and another 4-hour slot on the way back. So wherever you go, you've then got a problem of thinking, when is my next bus back? And the weather could be terrible. There's no real shelter anywhere. There are no proper bus stations. But the people that are using that bus are in turmoil because when they've been waiting 2 hours, that's 2 busloads of people trying to get onto one bus.
Marilyn, thank you so much for telling us about your experiences and what it means for your community. And you will probably want to keep listening because on the line is Alice Ridley from the Campaign for Better Transport and also Paul Street, who's from the Confederation of Passenger Transport, which represents 95% of bus operators. Good afternoon, Alice and Paul.
Hello, thank you for having me.
Thank you for joining us. Alice, let's start with you. Marilyn is one passenger in one part of the UK, and we know that the service can be really different from area to area. How common are the kinds of issues she's outlined?
Unfortunately, I think they're very common. At Campaign for Better Transport, we hear from people like Marilyn with stories like Marilyn's on an almost daily basis. Unfortunately, this is not a problem that's just affecting, rural areas or just urban areas or even just one part of the UK. It's a national problem. It's affecting everywhere, and buses are being cut just about across the whole country.
So, Paul, as I said, your organisation represents 95% of bus operators. And we should remember these are private companies. They're operating ultimately to make a profit. Is that getting in the way of providing a good service for passengers?
Good afternoon. Thanks for having me on. I think firstly, my sympathies go with Marilyn. It sounds like she's a really passionate bus user, and she's not getting the service she deserves. I think in the West Wales example, the industry is suffering with a lack of drivers, the driver availability. That's affecting services. But we are working with the Welsh Government to secure funding for next financial year after April. And what that does, instead of having piecemeal funding and long-term funding, it actually allows us and the operators and the councils to work together to really plan services and put measures in place that improve the issues that Marilyn describes.
I mean, what Marilyn's describing is sometimes very, very crowded buses because not what would normally be 2 busloads has been crammed into one. But some of those rural routes are quieter, aren't they? Is the issue that these are quiet routes and private companies can't make a profit on them?
So what we're seeing is, since the pandemic, people who are eligible for a bus pass, so concessionary travellers, they're down. So we're up to 75% pre-pandemic levels. So whether that's a change in habits or, they're getting the shopping delivered to the house, etc. We really need to work together to market those and get people back on bus because actually, Marilyn, when it works well, she enjoys it. So we just need to remind people of the importance of it. But costs are up as well by 24%, which makes it really challenging if the patronage isn't there. But in Marilyn's case, it sounds like it is.
Sure, but we're talking about Marilyn, but also more widely. So it is the fact that these are profit-making private companies getting in the way of providing the service that's needed.
I wouldn't say that. I think, it's a very challenging market at the minute. In terms of revenue, we're up to 85% for fare paying, but the concessionary market isn't there anymore. And, rising costs are really challenging for operators. And what the money they do make, they are investing back into better fleet. So it's really challenging across the board. But with government support, we can have that certainty of funding, which allows us to protect existing services and grow new ones and market them much better. So it's really challenging. But what we're asking for is a little bit more funding from government, which is seen as an investment. It levels things up and allows operators to run much better services.
Alice, we contacted the Department for Transport and they told us as part of the National Bus Strategy, they've invested £2 billion to mitigate the impact of the pandemic and help maintain existing bus routes and over £1 billion through bus service improvement plans while still maintaining that annual £250 million bus service operator grant to support services. Do you recognise that commitment to improving services from the government?
I mean, I think we do. I mean, the Bus Back Better, which is the national bus strategy, is something that Campaign for Better Transport, we campaigned for a long time. And when it was introduced 2 years ago, we were very, very pleased. And I think it is a good and ambitious strategy. Unfortunately, we're now sort of at the 2-year anniversary almost of that strategy, and very little's changed. In fact, things seem to be getting worse. So whilst it is a great strategy and we recognise there's been funding put in place, the funding isn't necessarily getting to the right places. Some of that funding is not everywhere has got funding. It's been restricted to certain areas. And I think, whilst the government's been very good at keeping bus services running during COVID, that all that hard work is in danger of being thrown away unless something happens at this cut-off point that we've been talking about in April, when it looks like services will go. So I think, yes, they've done some great things and there's lots of ambition, but we just need to get moving now. We really need to reinvigorate that strategy, get some more long-term funding so that we can protect buses and get some back. The buses that have gone, get some of those back for people like Marilyn.
Yeah, keep Marilyn moving. The government also says it's invested £60 million to cap single bus tickets at £2 across England between January and March to tackle congestion, to deliver real savings for passengers. Paul, briefly, is that a welcome move for bus operators? Because there were some reports that some of them were worried this might hit their revenue.
So yeah, it is welcome, and we're seeing uplifts in South Lakes, between Preston and Bolton, Oxfordshire, Whitney, Bicester and Oxford, and indeed between Brighton and Portsmouth. But it's only one thing, and we're calling for a package of policies, of which low fares are one of them. But with more certainty of funding, a bit more, that's all we're asking for, allows us to deliver this package of policies. So the policies could be, in a local area, more bus lanes, and £50 million will get you 200 miles. So it's about how can you make the bus more attractive? So one thing is the fare, but the other is the other things you could do.
Alice Ridley and Paul Street, thank you both very much for joining us. Now, are you heading out